Hey there, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Total Ramblings. Today we are looking at episode 7 of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. Now, beware, there will be some spoilers here, and essentially, I'm going to give you an episode rundown and then some of my own thoughts. So, we start off in the forest of At Attin, where the parents are trying to launch a somewhat dodgy looking communication device to get outside the barrier of the planet so they can communicate with their children. They are promptly stopped by a horde of the security droids who inform them quite politely they should put the device down or they'll be stunned for their own safety. And essentially, there's kind of a moment where the device is handed off from parent to parent. That parent gets stunned, that device gets handed off, that parent gets stunned, the device gets handed off. It's quite good. Nevertheless, the device takes off and goes outside the barrier. I've got some thoughts about the barrier, which I'll come to in just a sec. We then cut to the Onyx Cinder, the brand new unencumbered Onyx Cinder in hyperspace, looking very, very sleek. Clearly an Old Republic design of ship, kind of chrome and sleek and smooth and nice, even with a couple of little cannons on the sort of angled fronts, which I'm not sure if we saw before. May have been hidden under the armour. Wyn's not happy because the adventure's about to be over. But they're on the way home. The pirates promptly arrive in their frigate with a sort of hangar at Attin, and they observe that what should be a planet is what they call a toxic maelstrom. So I thought maybe the barrier was kind of cloaking the planet and making it completely hidden, but it turns out that it's actually kind of simulating a storm, makes it look like a sort of gas giant, I guess, with lots of, sort of lightning flashes and things. And as we find out later on, there's also an active defensive grid in there as well, shooting anything down that comes in. SM-33 seems to be up and running because Jod manages to can get him to talk about how Tak Renard got into At Attin previously. Of course, the pirates still don't believe it's really there, or at least Brutus doesn't. They send in a snub fighter. Now, we've seen these snub fighters before, and I'm trying to think which series they were in. It might have been Ahsoka, it might have been Obi-Wan. Basically, it's the same design of snub fighter that we've seen in a previous Disney Plus series, but the fighter gets blown up. So the pirates are busy kind of pondering whether to believe Jod or not, whereupon the Onyx Cinder arrives, and there's a beautiful shot of it kind of coming into the orbit of the planet. It looks really nice. They tractor the ship on board, and they're trying to get on board the ship when the claw that we saw a couple of episodes ago snaps up Brutus. There's some really lovely imagery here where you see Jod on the sort of hangar deck of the frigate and you see the planet in the background. I have to say that the colour scheme of this series is really good. Apart from that one planet where it was kind of ashy and kind of, dark looking, the colours and the vibrancy of this series really kind of spring out. Jod promptly kills Brutus in cold blood. Which I like because it's an unsanitized kind of view of a character. It's not like, the hand shot first kind of thing. Essentially, the whole point of Han Solo shooting Greedo was that he is a scoundrel, and eventually you kind of see his character arc develop. And the whole addition of Greedo shooting first just makes a mockery of that. But here, essentially, Jod just kills Brutus, who is completely helpless and encased in this claw. Anyway, they get on board the ship, and this communication device comes out, and the parents are communicating with the children. Now, there's a nice bit here where Wim kind of says, we've got to take the ship back. And I think in other stories or adventures, or maybe something from the 80s or something, you might have seen the children being successful in taking back the ship, but Wim is basically almost immediately, knocked out of the fight kind of thing. And I thought that was quite refreshing. It's kind of an anti-cliche. But then we get an odd situation where SM33 reveals that there isn't currently a captain of the Onyx Cinder because, according to the pirate code, you can only be captain of one ship at a time. Have they not heard of a commodore or an admiral? Do the pirates not have these things? Anyway, there's a bit of a dispute over the ownership of the Onyx Cinder, which eventually results in 33 taking the kids' side and kicking everyone else off the ship. And it turns out that as they approach through the barrier, the Onyx Cinder is not originally a pirate ship. It's one of the Mint's own ships. Now, the kids later on say this is an At Attin ship. I'd query that, because how did Tak Renard get through the barrier in the first place to get the ship? It's probably from one of the other planets, one of the ruined planets that we've seen. He probably found this ship and thought, I can use this to get through into At Attin, and presumably disguise it as a pirate ship to kind of, for his own pirate means. So that would be my suggestion. And also, but there's something strange here happening with the barrier. So they get through the barrier, and the planet inside is either really small or the barrier is a lot bigger than we thought. And this is slightly odd, because when we saw one of the other planets, one of the ruined planets earlier in the series, we saw the Onyx Cinder going through, and the barrier generators were really close to the planet, right? Unless there's a series of them, now they're really far away and the planet's really small within. And also, when the communication device took off, it went almost immediately through the barrier. So unless the barrier is layered, I'm not really sure if the scale kind of works out here from what we've seen previously. Anyway, Jod has meanwhile, of course, got back on board the ship, because of course he has. And there's a very threatening scene where he's threatening the children with a lightsaber. Turns out that these ships, the Onyx Cinder, is a ship used by a Republic emissary, and it's accepted by At Attin's defences and allowed to land. And it's taken miles and 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 miles underground to a vast underground chamber where they're minting the coins, basically. And Jod says, how many of these underground chambers or vaults do you have? They get to a vault, and the droid says, we have 1,139 of these vaults, and they're massive, massive vaults, absolutely rammed with Republic currency. Now, the 1139, this has got to be a reference to 1138. So, of course, George Lucas's, one of his first films was THX 1138. We get a lot of references to 1138 throughout Star Wars, whether it be in the films or written media or comics or whatever it might be. So this 1139 has got to be some kind of callback to that. And there's a lovely scene where Jod is kind of allowing the money to sort of pour over him, but he looks almost kind of sad as well. And I've got a bit of a theory about what might happen next, because we end the episode with Jod threatening the kids and their parents with the lightsaber, and he's already demonstrated the use of force powers earlier in the episode by just getting rid of the manacles that he presumably could have got rid of at any time. And the sad look in his face from Jude Law, who I think is excellent in this role. I'm wondering whether he really is a pirate, or whether he knows that he's going to have to not benefit from this wealth, because he's looking at the money, and there's kind of a half look of, yes, I finally achieved my dream, but also this kind of sad look as if he could never achieve the dream. Do you know what I mean? Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I'm wondering if we're going to get a reveal of who Jod really is, because at one point the kids say to him, who are you? You know, you've got so many different names. And I'm wondering whether he is a good guy after all, because certainly some of the interactions he had with the children before he sort of turned were very interesting. I have to say, the new Onyx Cinder looks absolutely beautiful. Now that the armour's off, the cockpit is more exposed, and you can now see sort of windows all around, and you can see the controls more, and it's much kind of brighter inside. It looks amazing, and I really hope we get like a follow-up kind of Lego set of the revised Onyx Cinder. That would be very nice, with hopefully an SM33 minifig, because we didn't get that. These are the minifigs that we got with the original Onyx Cinder Lego set, and you'll notice SM33 is missing, and he's a vital part of the crew. But yeah, this episode, visually stunning, really kind of moves on the secret of At Attin. So it turns out that it's not cloaked, it's basically camouflage. It's made to look like a gas giant or a planet that's impenetrable to regular ships, because they'll get destroyed. And of course it has a defensive grid, so they literally will get destroyed. And this is presumably how it's remained hidden for so long. And essentially the society on the planet is self-sustaining. The children were supposed to learn about the secret of At Attin when they graduated. So I like this idea. Presumably At Attin was waiting for someone to collect the money at some point, and maybe this is why they've got so many vaults that are full, because they've just been making money this whole time, right? So they've presumably been waiting for an emissary for a very long time, because they're completely oblivious to the war, the Civil War and all the rest of it. And we're in New Republic times now. We've gone through the Empire and we've gone through everything. So it's also interesting that the Empire apparently didn't inherit the knowledge about the Old Republic mints from the Old Republic when the Old Republic became the Empire, which is kind of interesting. Could be a little bit of a backstory there. But we've got one more episode to go, I believe, in this excellent series. I've really enjoyed it. This episode really cracked along really quickly, and if you're not watching it, I thoroughly recommend it. I'm going to shut up now. I look forward to receiving any comments or thoughts below. Please remember to like, subscribe, do all the usual YouTube stuff, and I will see you in the next episode of Total Ramblings. Bye bye.